Welcome to the Only One Mic podcast called Gerard, Brooklyn Dre, just me. And right now we have a very, very special guest. Our guest is Jason Greer, Greer Consultants. How you doing, good brother?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
All right. So, you got a lot of history, Jason. And, looking at all your stuff. First of all, let's be clear. This man has appeared on Pix 11. You've appeared on Court TV, been featured in Forbes magazine. You've had conversations with them. So many extensive people, but yet he's here with us today.
This is big.
Thank you.
This is
big, right? All right, so let's get it in, man. So, Greer Consultants, Consultant Incorporated. You deal with a lot of different corporations. They call you, was it the Employee Whisperer? Is it?
Employee Whisperer, yeah.
You must be yelling right now because a lot of people quitting these jobs left and right. So, how did you get that name, brother?
Man, great question. I had no idea that my clients were calling me the Employee Whisperer. So they're basically doing it behind my back. And I got a call, I want to say probably around 2010, from a gentleman who's gone on to be a wonderful client of mine. And he didn't even know my name. He just said, "Can you direct me to the Employee Whisperer?" And I was like, "Who in the blue hell's the Employee Whisperer?" I thought it was somebody playing on my phone.
Right.
And he goes, "The Employee Whisperer." And I heard him typing something in the background. And he goes, and obviously he was looking me up. He goes, "Jason Greer?" I said, "Yeah, this is Jason." He goes, "I don't know if you know, but people call you the Employee Whisperer." And I just try to play it off. You get caught in a situation, you try to play it off like you knew. But basically, when I came to find out, they're calling me the Employee Whisperer because I have this ability that if you put me in front of a group of employees, I'm going to tell you, employees, managers, whatever the case might be, I'm going to tell you anything and everything you think you want to know and things you didn't want to know about your employees. Because my style, I have a bachelor's degree in social work, a master's degree in social work, and a master's degree in human resources management. So really, much of my life has been geared around understanding people, understanding the nonverbals, understanding, people, someone might say something, but I'm consistently looking behind what they're actually saying, making sure that the nonverbals are matching up with the verbals. So what I've been able to do, and I made an incredible career out of literally being able to take what employees are saying, what managers are saying, and codify it in such a way that executives understand so that we can move workplaces forward as opposed to being regressive.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. And let me be the first. Thank you so much for joining our show today. And thank you for what you do. I don't know if, I'm sure you hear thank you all the time, but I don't know if you even realize how important it is to the employees to have someone like you in their corner. A lot of times I think things get lost in translation. And I personally, myself, I can't stand corporate America anymore. I'm really trying to because the climate is not the same. How would you describe how the climate was 20 years ago as opposed to now? Do you see a difference or is it just me?
Man, it's a big difference. And I must say that, I'm going to date myself here. I'm 48 years old. So 20 years ago, I was 28 years old. I was still, I think around that time, I was still a board agent with the National Labor Relations Board. So that's where I learned labor relations and all that stuff. And I'm going to tell you that the market was populated by folks who were either baby boomers or Gen Xers. Baby boomers are basically, the attitude is treat me like garbage, but just, I don't care. I'll complain about it as I'm driving home to work or as I'm driving home from work. I complain about it to my wife, to my husband, to my partner, whatever the case might be. But I'm never going to say it in front of my boss because I don't want to be fired. Right. Gen X, we have some of that mentality because that was basically, that was just put in our brains. Man, you go, you get your degree. I never forget my parents tell me this. Go get your degree. In my case, get degrees. And I'll tell you, I have multiple degrees, not because I'm that smart, but because I didn't know what in the blue hell I wanted to do. Right. So, I'm just being real with you. So go get your degree, get your job, get married, have your white picket fence, all that stuff, the suburban dream. Right. And don't ever say anything to your boss or to your employer that's going to cause you to lose that job.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward 20 years later, it's 2022. And between 2020 and 2022, I will really say that those are the years of the employees. Because when COVID hit, Man, look, if COVID had hit 20 years ago, if our employers told us to jump, we just go ahead and jump. If our employers said you need to get 8 vaccinations, we get 8 vaccinations. If our employers said, even in the midst of this global pandemic, we still expect you to show up for work, guess what we would have done? We would have shown up for work.
Yeah.
Right? What I'm seeing today is you have employees, when you look at all the stuff that Amazon's going through, when you look at the stuff that corporate America as a whole is going through, what we're seeing is that employees are more vocal today, not just about working conditions, but also about what they expect from their employer. We've never seen anything like this, right? I mean, you're talking about a wholesale change that is happening across the environment, and it's really being driven by the power of social media. It's really being driven by the fact that, look, Black folks 20 years ago, we're like, man, I'm just happy to have a job, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Black folks today are like, you know, bump you. I don't feel like dealing with you any longer. I'm just going to go create my own hustle, right? I mean, it's just the reality. It's 20 years ago, I never would have dreamt of being an entrepreneur. I just knew that I wanted to do something that would change the world. Fast forward 20 years later, I'm in a position now where I'm changing the world daily. And when I say changing the world daily, not just in terms of what I do, but what I experience from other people. Right. Because I'm seeing this new generation of hustlers who are literally saying, man, I saw my parents. I either saw my parent or I saw my parents get treated like garbage or gabbage, as his brother said to me the other day, right? See people get treated like garbage. Never saw, you know, he was telling me, he goes, look, my mom, sole breadwinner. So she worked 2 to 3 jobs, and I saw people treat her like garbage just so that she could make ends meet for us. So I want something different. And if that means I got to cancel my Netflix subscription, if that means I got to cancel cable and I get YouTube TV, if that means I can't go out on a Friday night, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to hone my craft. So what I'm seeing, just a long-winded way of saying that what I'm seeing more than anything else is employees are saying enough, but they're backing it up with action.
Right.
And action, either I'm going to go out there and hustle for what I want outside of corporate America, or I'm going to hold corporate America accountable for what I expect from them.
And do you think by doing so that you see more employees taking back the power from these corporations, like in the case of the Amazons and the Starbuckses and everything like that? Now, it seems like these whole actions are getting these major corporations shook up now, because now they know we got to treat these people right, you know.
Plus, this generation is just different. You know what I mean? Like he was saying, I mean, we always look at this generation as if they're like wild and crazy, but in regards to getting money and being entrepreneurs, they're going to get that money. You know what I mean? So it's a hungry generation. Then also too, they've actually found a way to make money and not go to work, you know, in most cases.
I want to tell you something to the point you just brought up. I was on a plane to LA about 4 weeks ago. And I'm sitting next to this kid, and, you know, we're in business class. And I say I'm sitting next to this kid because he was 22 years old. And I'm looking at him thinking to myself, man, when I was 22, I would have dreamt of being in first class, right? What's he doing in first class? Right. Only to find out in conversation with this cat, he's making $400,000 a month. I mean, through social media, through sponsorship. And I'm just like, I went from judging this kid to being like, man, how do I become a hustler? How do I become an employee? You mean if I use this thing called Instagram, maybe I can start to make some money? I mean, because I just got verified on Facebook and Twitter here within the past week, right? I'm proud of that, because that means that in some form or fashion, I've made a statement. But man, I'm still 10 years behind where these folks are, because they're hustling. And I keep going back to that term. They are hustling. So to go back to your original question, when you look at what Christian Smalls did at Amazon, and if you don't know the story of Christian Small, he's legitimately Small or Smalls. I can't remember. I'm just going to see.
Yeah, Smalls. Yeah.
Look, I'm never going to hide the fact that an aspect of my business has been helping companies remain union free, right? But I'm going to tell you that I will give respect where respect is due. And Christian legitimately stood up to Amazon. And look, it wasn't like he was backed by, you know, the AFL-CIO. It wasn't like he was backed by Service Employees International Union or the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, right? Because let's be real. People can say what they want to about those labor unions, but the reality is they're big businesses in themselves, right?
Yeah.
And historically, they are big businesses that have disenfranchised African Americans and ethnic minorities, unless they need it.
True. Yes.
Right? And we only know that because when you look at the Teamsters have ongoing class action lawsuits from actual Teamsters employees who are Black people who are saying that they're consistently being denied opportunities for promotion. So you take a Christian Smalls, who wasn't, it wasn't like he was goaded by any of the big boys. He just said, I think that we deserve something better. This brother sat outside, rain, sleet, snow. You're talking the East Coast. You're talking New York, right? It wasn't like he was in California where it's nice all the time. It wasn't like he was in Florida where it's nice all the time. This brother sat outside with a cot and spoke to Amazon employees one-on-one. And I'm going to tell you, because I know this for a fact, that Amazon internally were telling their employees, we don't think this young man, I'm saying young man, they weren't calling him young man, right?
Probably everything but young man.
Everything but. Let's be real, a lot of coded language like calling him a thug, right? And you all, look, let's be real. When I hear thug today, I know what you're really saying.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I know what you're really saying. But they were saying that he's not articulate enough to convey the message as to why these employees should go union. So they really thought they had this in the bag. But if I'm going to look at a formal definition of what it means to be articulate, it means that you are able to convey a message in a manner in which people understand.
Well, I think what's beautiful about him is that he took it back. Like, a lot of times when, I've been to companies and people come in and they're claiming that, they're supposed to be like the union and whatever, and they can't really relate to you. You know what I mean? And I think he took it back to like Jimmy Hoffa. That was the beautiful thing of Jimmy Hoffa and those type of guys, is that they were regular guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The way they talk to people, they could talk to a person who was in college, or they could talk to a person who had no high school diploma, and they all got the same message, the same way. So I think the beauty of that kid is that, like you said, is something where he was, it was a light debate I think he was having with somebody in Congress, and they were talking. Yeah, and he was talking, and Lindsey Graham is talking to him using all of the nice words and everything like that. Right. And he just smoothly handled Lindsey Graham like it is absolutely nothing.
I mean, think about this. This brother is on international television, not national television, international television, with a mouthful of gold.
A Yankee hat on.
with a jacket that says, "Eat the rich."
Right.
And he's staring at Lindsey Graham and had Lindsey Graham befuddled.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point where Lindsey Graham was trying to come up with all these, and I'm sure Lindsey Graham's aides and associates and all that stuff prepared him for talking points.
Right.
How do you talk to a group? How do you talk to a person, let alone talk to a group of people that you don't understand? So getting back to that original question about, what changes are we seeing? This is a new generation of people. And it started with a whim. That basic whim was, we want something different. And now it's bled across generations of people who are finally standing up saying, we not only want something different, we deserve something different. Right? So that's the change that I'm seeing in my industry is, look, I don't care if you're an organization. I don't care if you are a union buster, as people have called me. I don't care if you are a union member or if you're a union official. There's a different language that we have to start speaking now. And that language sounds something like this. How are you doing? Because I really want to get to know how you are doing. We have products and services because we understand the job description, but I understand that there's a heart, there's a mind behind every single spreadsheet, because there's somebody or some bodies that has made that product and has made that service a reality. But I got to get to know how they're feeling inside, because if I don't, I'm going to lose them.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Doing what you do, how was it, or is it for you being a Black man working and doing the job that you do? What were your struggles? What did you see?
Man, I love these questions. First, thank y'all for this conversation. This is so
thank you for being on. Can't thank you.
Yeah, greatly appreciate you. Mm-hmm. It's been a struggle from day one. And I'll tell you why it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle because no one else looks like me doing what I do at the level I'm doing it.
I was going to say that.
That's a fact. Yeah.
So you have this generation of people in my industry who the only time that they ever use people who look like me is if they needed them for a case. Or if they were dealing with a group of Black people, Black employees, and they're like, who do we know is Black? Who do we know is Black? Let's talk about it.
Talk about it.
Right.
Then they bring me in. This is back in the day when I was subcontracting, when I was just starting my business. They bring me in, they see how effective I am, but I'm looking at the money that they're making off my back. I'm like, wait a minute. If 2 + 2 = 4, but I'm only being paid 3, right?
Something ain't right.
Yeah.
Something ain't right.
Something ain't smoking.
And so my struggle has been, I really didn't know anybody else who looked like me, right? But I also, beyond just the aesthetics, I also didn't know anybody else who was capable of doing it like I do it. So instead of being frustrated by, working for this person, working for that person, I was like, bump it, I'm going to go work for myself. And that meant for close to 2 years, I was a stay-at-home dad with a bunch of really nice business cards. But by the grace of God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, I happened to meet a woman by the name of Brenda Bacon, who is the CEO of Brandywine Senior Living, large, mid-size assisted living company, senior care company based out of New Jersey, African-American woman. Mm-hmm. And I was in a weird headspace because I was trying to figure out what my next moves were. And I had a bunch of people around me calling me, basically saying I was their boy, people who didn't look like me. Brenda legitimately said to me, you're the type of talent that does not need to be anybody else's slave. Now, there's something to be said when one of your own speaks truth to you.
Right.
Right. And so I saw Brenda, highly successful, Wharton School of Business, MBA. She's killing it, CEO of a mid-sized company. I was like, I want to be that because representation matters. Mm-hmm. So in terms of when I look at the struggles that I've had, I'm still not part of the good old boys club. No matter what I've accomplished, I'm still not a part of it. But that just drives me harder because my company motto and my personal motto is I'm coming for everything they said I couldn't have.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when I've accomplished the things that they said that I couldn't have, I make up something else in my mind. So did that answer your question?
It did. And actually opened up the door for something else because I know I read Tyrone Beeson's article about you in the LA Times. Well, basically was talking about your family was featured in it heavily, but it was also talking about, your growing up and everything like that. This brother was dealing with cross burnings in the 90s. Where, we were just doing what we were doing. Right. Go ahead, tell that story, Jason, because I think the way that you shaping it, when you say you come in for everything you say you couldn't have, mm-hmm. That shapes that story. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you, if you feel like it, man, if you want to open up that door and just explain to us about that?
Yeah. Yeah, not a problem. So there's a historical basis to my statement of I'm coming for everything they said I couldn't have. So when I grew up in St. Louis, and that's where I'm currently living right now, and I moved my wife from Chicago, living in Hyde Park, the Mecca, as she called it, to St. Louis, but she forgave me a couple of years ago, so we're good.
You're good now.
So I grew up in St. Louis, primarily grew up in a suburb called Bridgeton, primarily white environment. And I say primarily because there was only 2 Black families in where I grew up. And they had this thing, and I don't know if this might be a St. Louis thing or Bridgeton thing, but they had this thing called the N-word knocking, right? Mm-hmm. And and if you don't know what that is, it's basically you run up to somebody Black's house, you knock on the door, and then you run, right? They also call it ding dong ditch, right? And I didn't realize what it was because I was a kid, right? And I'm just giving you some context here until I was hanging out with a group of kids, and they're like, "Do you want a N-word ditch?" Right? And I was like, "Or N-word knocking?" And I go, "Huh?" And I was like, "All right," because I just want to fit in, right? Short, Black, chubby with an afro, right? I just want to fit in, right? And lo and behold, they're running up to my parents' house, about to knock on the door. And I'm like, I've had several of these wait a minute moments, right, in my life. And I remember asking my father, I was like, what is this? And he started to explain, just started breaking down race, but at such an early age, right? Such an early age for me, because race in itself has informed so much of my life. Because from my parents' perspective, my father was a sharecropper in Tennessee. My mom grew up in the southern part of Missouri. So for them, they experienced segregation. So their attitude was, if we raise you in a white environment and you get to know the ways that white people think, that's going to help you to be more successful, because there were things that were denied them when they're growing up.
Right.
But there's a lot of pain that comes with that, right? So fast forward age 17. So we're talking 1991. I was a senior at Lutheran High School North in St. Louis. And my father was a principal at Normandy Elementary School. And Normandy is close to the city, right? So my father got his PhD in educational psychology. And he decided, since he has his PhD, Dr. Greer, as we still call him to this day, he's 84 years old, love my dad, right? And my mom was a nurse at St. Mary's Health Center, right? My father figured, if he's watching all of his colleagues who happen to be white, who are moving up in central administration, they're principals now of larger school systems, and they all had their PhDs, he's like, I'm as smart, if not smarter than they are, so let me go ahead and start applying for some other jobs. He's applying, he's traveling all over the country, because if you remember anything about the early 90s, that's when affirmative action was really hot and heavy.
Yeah.
So you had these school systems that they had to meet a quota. And when I say they had to meet a quota, not in terms of who they hired, but who in terms of they interviewed, right?
Right.
So my father's going around the country. He's interviewing here, he's interviewing there. And if you ever meet my father, so I'm 6'3", 275 pounds, right? Former linebacker. My father is about 5'8". My mom is 5'3". I don't know where in the blue hell I came from. I don't ask any questions. I just know my parents love me, right? So, but my father continued to get my father's like this ball of charisma. I mean, he's just an amazing man. But we noticed that he started getting the same rejection letter over and over again. And the letter basically went something like this: Dr. Greer, we thank you for your interview. We love your energy. We love your enthusiasm. But unfortunately, we cannot offer you a position because we need to see that you have experience educating other kids. Now, the Normandy school system where he was a principal at is 99.9% African-American. So other kids was code for white kids.
White kids, yeah.
Right? But there was one school system that went out of their way to recruit my father, and that was in Dubuque, Iowa. Mm-hmm. They wanted him to come in to be the principal at Irving Elementary School. And it's my senior year. So my parents, my father went through the interview, decided he was going to take the job. My parents at that point had been married for about 30 years. And they were not going to take me out of Luther North because at the time I was still competing for scholarships, things like that. Right. So they decided to do a commuter marriage. So we moved my father up August of 1991. And what we didn't know was Dubuque had created this program called the Constructive Integration Plan, whereby they were going to recruit over 100 Black families into Dubuque over the course of 10 years, because the general populace of Dubuque was about 99.8% white. Right. Problem is they never told us, right? So they burned crosses when my father was officially announced as the principal at Irving Elementary School. They burned crosses in protest of my father. Now, my father, being the father that he is and husband that he is, wanting to protect my mother and I, just didn't tell us what was happening. But yet here we are in Bridgeton. And even though I grew up in this all white neighborhood where they were very liberal with the N-word, we never had anybody defacing our home or anything like that. Yet we have windows being broken out. We have people spray painting the N-word on our siding and all that stuff. And we quickly learned with the insurance companies that if you continue to make the same claim over and over again, they think you're trying to run a scam, right? But we're basically trying to get we're trying to get the stuff removed from our house. Then everything erupted. My father he was sequestered by the U.S. Department of Justice. My family went under federal protection because the KKK had upped the death threats against my father and against my family. They ended up burning more crosses in protest of my family, and because we were now the public faces of this program. And I was 17 years old, and I'm going to be really candid with you, man. We're doing all this media, but all I'm thinking is, I don't even know who I'm taking to homecoming. Right? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like my
17-year-old thought. It's not.
My mindset was still exactly. My mindset was, I'm 17 years old. It's my senior year. I'm hanging out with my buddies. It's pre-social media. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to ever see these folks again. Right? All I wanted to do was play football, play baseball, date, do all the things that you expect to be able to do at 17. Yet here I am still trying to understand why these folks are burning these crosses in protest of my father, and why they're burning these crosses in protest of us. And they don't even know us. So my parents, being who they are, they said, there's no way we're going to run, because if we run, what does that say? What does it say about our family? So we moved there officially in the summer of 1992. I started as a freshman at Valparaiso University. And I don't know if you want to talk about humiliation. Humiliation looks like the U.S. Department of Justice coming in to meet with the president of the university because they have to ascertain as to whether or not campus environment is safe for me.
Wow.
Because there was an active Klan chapter in Valparaiso. Valparaiso University is in the city of Valparaiso, Indiana. And there was an active Klan chapter in Valparaiso. So they had to make sure that it was safe for me. And I would go home during the summers, during breaks. And it was my first experience being at Valpo. It was my first experience actually being around rich people. Like, I thought you were rich. If you drove a Honda Accord, you were rich to me. Right? now I'm in college with people whose families own Honda Accord Honda dealerships. Right. You're talking about this generational wealth that I didn't even know was a thing until my freshman year. Right. To me, generational wealth meant maybe my dad's going to leave me some comic books. Right. Do you know what I'm saying? That it was so weird to me. The idea of generational wealth was weird to me. So spring break, I go home, and it wasn't uncommon for, like, I would walk to the gym every day, and it wasn't uncommon for, white folks to drive past me screaming, go back to Africa, call me the N-word and all that stuff. So I got to the point where I would just listen to my Walkman, because we didn't have iPods and all this stuff back in the day. And I'm addicted to Sade still to this day.
Me too.
She doesn't age, and the music just keeps getting better and better. I don't care if she takes 10 years in between releasing albums, right? I'm there. So I'll never forget, I'm walking to the gym. So this Thursday, I'm scheduled to be back on campus on Sunday. I'm walking to the gym. This is on a Thursday, and I'm listening to Sade. People are driving past me, screaming stuff at me, whatever, right? Group of 4 men pull their car over, and they get out of the car. And it's almost like a movie, because like in a movie where there's like a soundtrack going, right? There's actions taking place, but there's a soundtrack going in the background. I just have Sade's No Ordinary Love going in my headset. And these white men get out of the car and they're yelling stuff at me, and I just see their mouths moving, but I'm listening to Sade. So, what I'm saying? So I'm keeping myself in my Zen place, my Sade place, right? And I noticed that one of the men had this bottle. It was like this clear bottle with no label on it, and it had this yellow liquid in it.
Oh, boy.
So I'm thinking it's like a bottle of Gatorade. And understand, even though I'm listening to Sade, I'm in my Zen place, I'm still positioning myself to fight. Because 4 white men are walking toward me, they're yelling stuff at me, and I know I haven't done anything to them, and I know what's about to go down. And this man takes the cap off, and he throws it at me. Hits me dead in my chest. And I'm wearing a white shirt. I look down at the shirt, and it's just stained with this yellow liquid. And I only realized that it's urine because it got in my mouth.
Oh, my goodness.
And my first thought, I kid you not, my first thought wasn't, all right, it's about to go down. It wasn't, let me do some Bruce Lee inspired, judo kicks that I don't know. Maybe I'm going to pull a muscle. Right? It wasn't anything like that.
Took somebody off, one of the two, Jason.
Right. Honestly, my first thought was, man, who drives around with a bottle of their own urine? Right? Like conceptually, I just could not. It made no sense to me. It wasn't logical. And then my next
one of them juicy Smollett.
Right. Exactly. My next thought was, I had no thought because now I'm in the fight or flight. And embarrassingly at the time, I ran because I had just gotten pissed off. And I realized that in that moment, had I tried to fight them, there was nobody's going to come help me.
And you definitely don't want to get your behind whipped to Sade.
No.
You'll never listen to it again.
Right. I'm not going to get pissed on and get beat up while listening to Sade. those are just memories I just don't want.
You don't want those memories.
I can't do it.
You find yourself mad at Sade for no reason.
Exactly. And I can't be mad at Sade, right?
Right.
Yeah, a good run is better than a bad stand any day.
Any day, bro.
Exactly. Because look, man, when you look at, it's so funny in this sidebar, my wife and I, we had talked about buying a gun at one point just for home protection. And it just so happened that a retired Boston Celtic, I don't even remember who it was, had a handgun, and his house was up for sale. Somebody came in, he produced the gun because he didn't realize that they were coming in to look at the house, and he got arrested for it. And I remember my wife saying, if it's funny that everybody else can own a gun, but we can't. Right. So that's just a sidebar. So anyway, I run home. My dad is out at this point. He's doing a lot of public speaking. So it's just my mom and I. And I open the door and I'm just screaming and I'm saying stuff I'm not going to repeat on your podcast. Right. I was done. And my mom's like, what's wrong with you? Why do you smell like piss? And I go, they pissed on me. I kept saying, they pissed on me. And my mom's very stoic. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like you know, those folks who just been there, done that, and there's just little that really roused them up. Mm-hmm. She goes, what happened? And I explained to her what happened. And she goes, look, because my bedroom's down in the basement. She goes, give me your clothes. I'm going to wash your clothes. Go downstairs, take a shower, brush your teeth because you smell like piss. And then come back up here and we're going to talk. Man, I went downstairs and I brushed my teeth, honestly, to the point where my gums were bleeding, because I still had it in my mouth. Right. Mm. I showered half an hour. I'm trying to get it off me. Went back upstairs and I'm looking at my mom and I go, I don't know why we're here. I go, if you and dad are trying to prove a point, point's been proven. Mm-hmm. Let's go. Let's leave. You can get a job anywhere. My dad can get a job anywhere. And she goes, Jason, I can't get a job anywhere because my mom had been a nurse for 30 years. Prior to moving to Dubuque. And we moved to Dubuque. And the first question that people in the hospitals would ask her is, are you Dr. Greer's wife? Are you related to Dr. Greer? She would say yes. Then conveniently, they would find reasons why her license wasn't good enough or couldn't work there. Right. And she lets me yell. She lets me get all this stuff out. And then she asked me this question. She goes, did you die? I go, what do you mean, did I die? She goes, are you dead? And I go, well, Mom, clearly I'm alive because I'm talking to you. And she goes, well, first get that bass out your voice.
It's Mama you're talking to.
Right. Mama, yeah. She goes, I know you're worked up, but get that bass out your voice. And I apologize. And I go, why are you asking me did I die? She goes, I need you to understand something. She goes, in Crystal City, where I grew up, because the black folks lived under the hill. The white folks lived over the hill. The black folks lived under the hill. When the white men would get drunk at the bars on Friday and Saturday nights, they would drive under the hill to go pick up the black women. Mm-hmm. And if you happen to be the husband of one of those black women, the boyfriend of one of those black women, the brother, or even the friend, and you decide to take a stand in defense of that woman, you didn't come home that night.
Yeah, she was used to it. It's average.
And she goes, so I'm sorry that you got peed on. She goes, but you made it back.
Right.
She goes, here's the reality. You are a black man in America, and America doesn't want you. America did the Constitution. She goes, the Constitution wasn't created for you. These laws weren't created for you. She goes, you're getting a college education. 50 years ago, you couldn't have gotten a college education at the school you're at right now. She goes, so I need you to get it out. I need you to cry it out. But more importantly, I need you to go back to campus and you don't say a single word to any of those white friends you have because they're not going to understand.
Wow.
That's right.
Yeah. So when you reminisce on everything that happened to you, right? And you see cases like the Ahmaud Arbery zone where those things were similar situations that just, you know, you were blessed enough to not be in that situation where it put your life, you know, took your life away from you. How do you look at these different things now that you see that's going on in our world today, you know, as older Jason, and in comparison to how you were growing up?
I don't know that I see a difference in where I am today versus where I was yesterday. The only difference being, I told you a story about my getting peed on, and there was no social media to capture that. So there were no arresting those men because I can't even tell you what their names were. Right? The problem is, for as bad as it was that I got peed on, that's minor compared to the fact that Ahmaud Arbery was simply jogging while black.
Right.
When you look at George Floyd, I watched this brother get assassinated.
We all did.
Yeah.
We watched this brother get assassinated, and there were still conversations taking place as to whether or not he deserved it.
I know.
You know, we just spoke about that recently, and I was telling them that, you know, years ago that I've had an African history professor tell me that he was explaining how through media, you know, black men are portrayed as like almost like superhuman.
Yes.
He was saying, so when we see African American people being beat on TV psychologically, even black people, you know, sometimes I looked at Rodney King. I thought he could take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm saying that it's right. I thought he could take it. But when we look at other people, like I think Kamitra had brought up on another show that how when, you know, the Chinese people were doing Chinese Lives Matter, and I would look at the Chinese person get beat up and I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Because we don't think that they can take it. But I think through media, through the police, through all of these different avenues that were constantly showed on TV, that we believe that, you know, we're made to be able to take this type of punishment, you know? And it's wrong, but I'm just saying that that's how society looks at it.
But that's for everything you just said is fair, because society does look at us as being superhuman. We look at each other as being superhuman. But I'd like to add something to that. We look at each other as being superhuman because we continue to survive in a world that is still debating as to whether or not our lives matter. Right?
Right.
They're still debating as to whether our lives matter. And I bring up George Floyd. So I wrote a book called Bias, Racism, the Brain. I co-authored it with one of my closest friends in the world, who is the foremost leader in brain-based, in the neuroscience of leadership, which is just basically brain-based.
Right.
The book is called Bias, Racism, the Brain, and I'm proud to say it's become an international bestseller. So George Floyd happens, and all of a sudden I'm getting these calls from people that I hadn't spoken to in years. All happen to be white people. Mm-hmm. And they're asking this fundamental question, what can we do to make things better?
It's crazy.
I'm thinking to myself, think about how you had to catch lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, did it have to take this?
Right.
In order for this to happen.
Understand, to get people to the point where they want to at least engage in the conversation about racism, COVID happened. They happen to stay at home. They're being told by their employers they can't come back to work. The government has imposed mandatory lockdowns. For the first time, you had white people feeling as powerless as minorities have felt in this country for generations.
That's a fact.
And it took this degree of empathy for them to begin asking the question, what can we do to make things better? But it only lasted 1 month. Now we're talking about privilege, because the privilege is, I see it, but I don't want to deal with it now.
Right.
So in the workplace, when you're looking at, you know, we all deal with this equity discussion. And, you know, someone once said that the equity discussion in workplaces are basically people asking us to re-traumatize ourselves to teach you how to not traumatize us.
Ooh, that's powerful.
So
that's powerful.
If you really think about it, right, the equity discussions never came up in the workplace for almost 30 years, 40 years, whatever, like in terms of just like now out and out racism. But like you said, Jason, what can we do to make it better, right? I remember speaking.
I think it does come. I think it does come up. It's just a joke, though. You know, it's not really. It's a joke.
And this is what I was getting at: is that you had to watch, as you said, a man get assassinated on television, or to watch various. Because this is not the first time we see, our people get beat by the police and things like that. When you're watching Rodney King to George Floyd to Ahmaud Arbery, these things go all the way down the list. Why is it an issue now that we can take the pause and say, all right, it's time to be equitable? It had to take for these people to die in order for these companies to recognize equity.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
To a degree, it took, and I'm going to make this into a singular event. It took the death of George Floyd, because there are a lot of Black people who died before George Floyd and it was caught on camera.
Right.
And there are a lot of Black people who've died since George Floyd and was still caught on camera.
Mm-hmm.
So let's, we got a level set with that. But I'm going to say that more organizations are recognizing the diversification of their customer base, and not just from a perspective of their customers looking like the four of us here on this call, but you do have a number of folk who are now choosing the businesses that they want to, that they want to do business with, that they want to buy their products and their services based on their human rights perspective. Because people are actually, look, there are a lot of people who will say that social media is the death of our civilization, right? And you can make, that's subject for another conversation. But I'm going to say that social media has introduced corporate America into the living rooms that we grew up in. And you have a customer base now that's more vocal than they've ever been before. Mm-hmm. And if you happen to be a CEO that says, all lives matter and I stand with Donald Trump, which is your right, understand that there is a fallout that's coming as a result of that, as we've seen across the board. But on the other side of that, let's be real. How many organizations have we seen that took a stand with Black Lives Matter and then they lost a significant portion of their customer base? Right. So I'll say that the conversation, the equity conversation, is not something new to corporate America, because it's been happening. The equity piece has been there for decades. They're just being more public about it now.
Well, I think a lot of times they're being public just to get the heat off of their backs. I'll give you a perfect example. It's like I work for a credit union.
Okay.
I think right around the time where the Black Lives Matter and everybody started going a little crazy and getting violent and everything like that, all of a sudden we got these huge promotions for some brothers and sisters, and they even celebrated Black Solidarity Day. I was at the company 8 years. They never gave us a day off for absolutely nothing, but now we get Black Solidarity Day. So I think a lot of it is not. But and the funny thing about it is a CEO gave a Zoom meeting and he had like these crocodile tears and all the other stuff like that. Like you said, like you didn't. It's impossible that you didn't know that this was not going on. You blinded yourself purposely not to know what was going on. But I just thought that was funny that, and again, I say, I don't think a lot of people do it out of this bleeding heart. I think they do it out of protecting the company. It's like, hey, listen, we ain't got no CEOs in here. We don't got no managers in here. We got to get somebody up in here soon before somebody start investigating what we're doing. You know what I mean? So I think that's the reason why it happens in most cases.
I don't know if y'all if any of y'all watch Atlanta, Donald Glover show.
That's my show. Oh,
now tell me, did you see this last season?
Man, let's talk about it. Are we talking about reparations? Are we talking about reparations?
Yeah. So I had my mother watch that. I mean, first of all, it was hysterical. To me, like it's dry humor throughout every episode. The only episode I didn't really get was the last one. I didn't like it. But every other episode I was like, wow.
Were Vanna's French?
Yeah.
It was different.
Yeah, it was a little weird. But they always have one really weird episode every season. And I think that was it for me when they were eating their hands or whatever.
It was disgusting.
Yeah. But that reparations episode, I looked at my mother, I said, what if it's true? Like, what if that happens? Like, I could just do my research and find out, like, okay, your great grandparents had my family as slaves, so now you owe me $3.5 million.
Right.
That's basically what the show was about. Like, all the Black people found out, like, who, like, if they were if their family was slaves, they were getting reparations from the descendants of the slave owners. Wow. So the white people was walking around scared. At one point, the white dude pulled up to his house. They was cooking out in front of his house, waiting for him to come home.
I mean, think about
but you know what's funny? What's funny about that is, like, years ago, I mean, when they started talking about reparations, there was I don't know, there's some form of government that allows them to release bank documents or something like that every so many years or something like that. And these people that were doing the reparations, they went into this bank and they were pulling out different things. And you can even go on, I think it was Wachovia's website when Wachovia was going, and it shows that how Wachovia basically started their business off the back of slavery. You know what I mean? So, and it was saying how we recognize that this has happened, and we know which families were sold, and because there's a ledger, you know what I mean? So, you know, they can do it, you know, just choose not. I think they just choose not.
I don't think it'll ever happen.
But it's a joke, but it's actually, yeah, I doubt it.
I don't think it will ever happen, but it'd be great.
It would be a wonderful thing, but consider how you brought up about reparations. I must have what you said to what Andre said is we talk about reparations. What I loved about that episode is the fact that God bless our white brothers and sisters. Let me preface it like that. God bless our white brothers and sisters who will tell you slavery's over.
Right.
Why do you still talk about race? Well, we are the recipients of 400 years of slavery.
Right.
400 years of bondage. You can't have one without having the other. If we're the recipients of what slavery did to us, you have to be the recipients of what slavery did to you.
Right.
So when we talk about reparations, the amazing thing to me about that episode is it was so layered. When they took over that man's apartment, they invoked eminent domain. How many times have we seen in the history of our country where white people have legitimately said, this is our land. I don't care that you have a claim to it. I don't care that you have a deed to it. We're evoking eminent domain by right of the power of our skin.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have to write laws around, look at what Black farmers are going through. Right. If we have to write laws around making sure that we can legally take what has been yours through generations, maybe your family's owned it from a couple generations, we will.
The Bruce Beach and Manhattan Beach thing that we actually talked to, we had a show about that.
Yeah.
And that whole thing, like how their family missed like generational wealth, man, because they just took Bruce Beach away from them. It's crazy.
I was in, New York is one of my favorite cities. Manhattan is actually my favorite city. And I was walking through Central Park and I was reminded of the fact that when you look at the history of Central Park,
right?
That's
all us.
That's all us. But when you look at the history of so much that's happened in this country, it's all us. Yes. I got a conversation with a buddy of mine because, I'm a proud ally of the LGBTQ plus community, right? And my buddy said, well, how could you do that? God didn't create them to be this. God didn't create them to be that. The Bible says this. The Bible says that. I looked at him and said, brother, the Bible was used as a means of enslaving our people. So the worst thing that you can potentially possibly do to me is to throw scripture at me. And the same type of scriptures that were thrown at me was the same type of scriptures that were thrown at our ancestors.
I know how the Bible was used, and I get what you're saying. You really don't have to answer this question, but do you believe that there is a higher power?
Oh, without a doubt.
I think because, we come from a Christian background, and I think like you said, we all believe the Bible is being used. But I don't think it myself personally, I don't believe that it's tampered with, but I believe that people used it. You know what I mean? It's just like, for instance, like you got the book and you chose to manipulate people with it because of the fact that, they might not have understood it. Just the same way as of right now, certain Christians, like I read the Bible and I know certain things. So I could walk into a church and I could say, that's not good. That's not good. That's not good. But because there's probably a whole congregation that really doesn't read the Bible, the preacher can pretty much say whatever he want to say, and then everybody goes along with it, and it makes sense.
It's funny that we're even having that conversation about the Bible. I know we got to wrap it up soon, but I was talking to somebody about the Bible today, and I was like, the Bible is like really in my opinion, based off of interpretation and how people perceived, Jesus coming into their life or what they witnessed and the different things that they went through. And I said, I have seen one pastor preach John the 14th one way, and then the same verses on John the 14th. I believe that's the verse, let not your heart be troubled, ye believe in God. I've been to a different church and the pastor had a whole nother take on it. Right. So, I can see where you both are saying like it can be used to your advantage. And I know that they use that to make us feel bad, which is why we actually created we had our own prayer and we had our own praying. I remember my cousin found some footage. I think he found it. I don't know where he found it online but it was an actual, like, you could actually hear like the slaves actually praying. Like it was like a prayer session. It was a very short clip. I don't know how he got it. I don't know where it was obtained from, but it was actually like slaves. But if you think about it, it's in the 90s, it was still slaves in some areas of Mississippi. So we still got a lot of growing to do.
But I think, but like we were saying, we get in a biblical conversation, go crazy, but
y'all are a lot of fun. Y'all are fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was just saying that, like you said, I don't even like. This is what I believe. I don't believe that it's really like your opinion. I believe people read it, and like the Bible say. Let's give an example. The Bible say, "Thou shalt not steal," and then it's simply to me, "Thou shalt not steal." That's it. You know what I mean? But then you might get somebody that interpret it and say, well, if something happens, maybe I'm able to steal or something or whatever like that. It's always some way to, that person manipulated. But it simply says, "Thou shalt not steal." You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? So I think there is a right way. But I think people choose to go their own way. But like I said, we'll be talking about that forever. Me and her bang heads on this all the time.
And I'll just say this as a Christian man, if we really were going to take the Bible at face value, as Christians potentially should, right? I say potentially because I'm just a man. I'm not God, right?
Right, I got you.
Then white Christians should be marching in front of us, marching on the side of us, and marching behind us. Because where there's individual suffering, there has to be collective grief. Where there's collective grief, there has to be collective action. And there's no other group on the face of this planet that should be taking up the cause of human rights like Christians should be. Right? That's just a reality.
I do think it's beautiful that when you do see those people, those white people or whatever like that do take up the cause and things like that. I mean, I've seen like certain religious clergy and stuff like that, went against their congregation and certain things. But like you said, it should be everybody. If you're in the church, it should be everybody in the church doing the same thing. Everybody should be on the same accord. But, reality, it never happens. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But
it's been
we'll bump heads on this all day, man. Yeah. We're not really bumping heads. We just, just shooting the breeze on it. That's
it's really been awesome meeting you, Jason, and continue doing what you're doing.
Man.
Yeah, this was a great conversation.
Hey, thank you all so much. You all were fun.
All right, so you definitely will come back.
I'd love to come back.
Extending the invitation to you.
We got a lot more to talk about. We can talk about a whole lot more.
Yeah, have a space where you be yourself, man. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I'm so glad Tiana set this up, and thank you all so much for having me and talking to me. This is fun.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so as we wrap up, of course, you have a lot that we covered on this one. Can you tell everybody where we can reach you at? How can we support the cause?
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Labor Diversity. Find me on Instagram, Jason.Greer, and you can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's Jason.Greer as well. You can also go to my website, hiregci.com. I'm the Employee Whisperer, so get at me.
All right. And the Only One Mic podcast is available on all major platforms that you stream your podcasts on. Also, check out our Only One Mic podcast YouTube channel to catch up on the past and current shows like you see here. Please don't forget to rate the show and subscribe. Also, if you want to get in contact with the Only One Mic podcast, you can reach us via Instagram and Twitter at the Only One Mic P1, Facebook and LinkedIn at the Only One Mic podcast, and also via email at the Only One Mic 00 at gmail.com. There you can leave your comments and questions or anything that you have for us. And we thank you once again for your time. And we encourage you to speak your truth quietly and clearly and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, because they too have their story to tell. So until next time, keep in mind that we never had to run from the Ku Klux Klan, so we shouldn't have to run from a black man. Peace.
That's nice. You need to trademark that. You need to trademark that.
Well, we can't. Kool Moe Dee said it first, in all honesty.
Gotcha. You got that. All right.
All right. Peace.